The men's Olympic tournament begins in Milano Cortina. Today, we're going to preview that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, February 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, and it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, the host of the show, and you can follow me on X at MonoMan12. That is Jacob Winans, joining me on another edition of Winans Wednesday. You can follow him on X at JakeW_8. Shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix and Olympic hockey fix for these next 2 weeks. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The Winter Games are on. There's no better way to follow them than with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. So, Panther fans, hockey fans, I'm excited to come to you today for this edition of the show, as now we are full speed ahead with the men's tournament with a lot of Florida Panthers representation. And man, let the games begin, Jacob. Very excited to be here. How about you?
Yeah, this is awesome. We haven't gotten anything like this in a very long time, since the last time we had a great World Cup of hockey. Really is the last time we had this sort of competition across the field. I mean, the Four Nations face-off last year was a wonderful idea, and it was a great taste of what was to come. And we're finally here at the real deal. So this should be some pretty good hockey.
Yeah, Four Nations last year, World Cup of hockey, which you got a mix of teams for countries, and then the North American team who was like 25, like 23 and under kind of players. So it wasn't necessarily a best on best. It was like a mini version of it. And then obviously with Four Nations, obviously some countries were excluded, like Denmark, Latvia, Germany, all of them. But just let's go straight. Let's discuss a little bit of the differences before we get to the teams actually when it comes to international hockey versus what we are usually experience here in the NHL. So some of the rules is that you can dress up to 20 players, so the benches are bigger, so you can have the 13 forwards and 7D dressed. It's a little bit more strict on the penalties when it comes to, we've discussed fighting, but also checks ahead. Checks ahead are automatic ejections in IIHF hockey. Icings are tighter. Instead of the players skating all the way to the dots, it's going to be blown as soon as it gets to the goal line, and whoever's ahead, that's when they are going to blow it there. And as far as the overtime rules, during the preliminary round, it's a 5-minute 3-on-3. And then in the knockout round, it's a 10-minute 3-on-3. And then the shootout, instead of 3 rounds, it is 5 rounds. And it is a 3-2-1-0 point system, something that we want here, but that the NHL doesn't do. The PWHL does that. And instead of an 18-minute intermission, it's a 15-minute intermission. And this one's a little bit of a newer rule, but hasn't been implemented with NHLers being back in the Olympics. This is going to be the first time that the trapezoid rule is in effect with NHLers being in the Olympics. So that's a little bit of a difference here. So your thoughts on this? But also one more thing. The gold medal game, though, it's 20-minute 5-on-5 until the first team wins. So no 3-on-3 there. So your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the rules here sort of play into an advantage for the speed teams, the skill teams. It's less of a forechecking sort of dump and chase style. It doesn't that's not really what wins these type of games. Which there's definitely a place for it, but at the end of the day, the rules are designed for skill and speed to win out. And I think the teams that you would expect to be successful with that are the teams that are going to be successful with that. The top end teams in the tournament, the USA, the Canada, the Sweden, those are the teams that have a ton of skill top to bottom. They've got mobile defensemen, and they're gonna have success here. I would also say, given the differences in rules, there's definitely several non-NHL players that are going to have really, really strong tournament here, because they're familiar with these rules in this type of game. It's a little bit different than the NHL game. So you're going to see guys who don't necessarily play in the NHL, or maybe were in the NHL for a short time and or ended their career in the NHL and went back over to Europe. They're going to have a lot of success here because this is the style they're used to. And then the overtime rules are always exciting in international play. We see it in World Juniors. We love when we have those games come down to an overtime. But one rule that is interesting with the shootouts that we didn't talk about here is the 5-round shootout. But if it ends up tied after 5, you can roll out any shooter you want as many times as you want.
2014 TJ Oshie.
Yeah, and you think back to the TJ Oshie shootout against Russia. That was Bobrovsky in net, so tough to talk about that one if as a Bob fan, but as a USA fan, that was absolutely awesome to watch, and got a little bit of a repeat of that when I believe it was Troy Terry had a similar shootout for the World Junior team. So if any shootouts come down to a tie after 5 rounds and you have to send out a shooter, it'd be really interesting to see if any of the teams would send out the same repeat shooter. I think if, like, Canada, for example, is in that situation, you got to think McDavid's going until they win or lose. And same thing goes for the U.S. If you want to roll out Eichel or one of those guys on the U.S. team. Gensel, Eichel, and one of those guys who's really, really successful in shootouts, they have the option to do that.
Yeah, no Barkov for Finland, so it's unfortunate that they won't roll him out for sure.
They do have Lundell, though.
Yeah,
you can't sleep on Lundy.
No doubt. And that's a very, very exciting that we are going to see a little bit of a difference. But some of the guys who don't play in the NHL are used to these rules, but at the same time, those are with larger rinks, so it's a mix of the NHL size rink with the stricter rules. So that's going to be a little bit of getting used to for both sides of guys who do play in the NHL versus those who aren't. But let's go over the groups. We're going to go each segment one by one. So this is going to be a long episode, just preparing you guys now here for this edition of the show. So Group A is Canada, Czechia, Switzerland, and France. That's going to be the first group in Group A. Those guys will not take action until Thursday. So all three games are going to be taking place. All at least not three. Two games of those will be taking place on Thursday. It'll be actually begin with Group B on Wednesday. So one thing that's exciting for me that I'm seeing here is that they're already putting Macklin Celebrini with Connor McDavid, and also the fact that you can't necessarily fight, but McDavid is going to be protected by someone like Tom Wilson. Each line has a little bit of a mix of that hard nose forward. Like one line has Wilson in it, Brad Marchand's with the Nathan McKinnon line, Mark Stone is going to be protecting Sidney Crosby, and every one of that top 9 is going to have kind of like a passing of the torch for different generations. Like, even though it's Crosby is the captain, this is McDavid's team, and then who knows when after McDavid gets to see, it could be Macklin Celebrini getting to see in 12 years from now as well. So it's a little bit of a young and old. You have the oldest player in the tournament versus and the youngest player here. And like we mentioned earlier, you can carry 13 forwards and 7D in this one. So I wouldn't, even though he's not in any of the 12, chances are that you could see Sam Bennett rolled into some of these lines throughout the game as well.
Yeah, that's a good point there, because having that extra forward on the bench. Usually when you see that kind of rule take place in World Juniors, for example, they tend to put out like a power play specialist or something in that 13th forward spot. That's not really going to be the case with this Canada team. They're going to put someone who's serviceable in those lines, who can fill in on any of the lines. It makes sense. It makes sense from the perspective of line management to put in a guy who can play multiple positions. And as that 13th forward, you probably want to go with a center, if anything. This team is loaded with centers, obviously, but having a guy who can play multiple positions, especially center if needed. I think Bennett gets the nod as the 13th guy in, at least to start. I don't think you bring Seth Jarvis over and not even dress him for any of the games, but I'm sure he'll get in the game. But I think Sam Bennett's going to be the guy who gets the first call as the 13th forward. And yeah, looking at that group, Canada, far and away the strongest center depth of any team in the tournament. There's no comparison when you can roll out McDavid as your 1C, McKinnon as your 2C, and Crosby as your 3C. That's arguably three of the top 5 centers in hockey right there. I don't know that anyone can really match up with that down the middle. So that's an obvious advantage. Other teams in the group, though, I think Czechia, that's going to be a physical team. The way their roster is constructed, obviously you got the skill on the top line with Necas and Pasternak, but down the lineup, that's big bodies, that's forecheck, that's going to be a physical group. You've got Radko Gudas on that team, you've got Jan Ruda on that team, you got Radim Šimek, who physical presence for the Sharks before taking on some injuries that sort of derailed his time there. So that's a really physical team. Switzerland's a little bit more of a skill team. I like the way they're built. Former Panther Dennis Mulligan's in the top 6 for that group. It'll be interesting to see him play. He's an offensive talent. And France is a little bit more of the underdog in that group, but they've got some NHL experience, some talent there, and they'll definitely put up a fight. Question mark really for Canada. It's the same as it always is. It's goaltending. Yep. We'll see what they get in goal. And I think the best goalie group or the best goalie situation in that group is definitely Czechia. So I think they could surprise some people and win a couple games in that group. I kind of believe in their defensive structure and their goaltending.
Yeah. And let's just, and it's crazy. Sam Reinhart is on the 4th line for Team Canada, but he's on the first power play unit as of right now, based on the practices. And we were talking pre-recording about how Canada starts on a back-to-back in the first and second game. So you're going to have to make a decision quickly on what to do with Jordan Binnington here. If he performs well, does he get another game? If he's shaky, do they go straight to Logan Thompson in that second game, which Canada plays Czechia in their first game, which that's already a tough test for them early on. That'll be at 10:40 Eastern Standard Time there. But for Czechia, some NHL experience on the blue line. You mentioned Šimek. He's no longer in the NHL right now, but you got Phil Pronik, Radko Gudas, both of them there. So that's a little bit of that experience. David Kampf, he's usually playing in the bottom 6 for himself, even though he's no longer with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He actually terminated his contract there, but there's also some bottom 6 depth there. Radek Faksa, Dominic Kubalik is as well. So that's another thing. But look at Switzerland, a defensive centerman in Nico Hischier, a speedy winger in Kevin Fiala, and then Roman Josi to run your power play unit. So I think that's a pretty strong. Team for Switzerland. I don't think that they're necessarily any favorites by any stretch, but I could see them possibly win a game here. So that's kind of a little bit of what I think of Switzerland here.
Definitely. Switzerland has an interesting decor because they've got a really good NHLer on each of their 3 pairs.
Yes.
You've got Josi on top pair, you got Siegenthaler on your second pair, and you got Moser, who's really underrated, on your third pair. And they've got enough. I feel like they have enough offense down the bottom of the lineup to compete in this group. Dennis Mulligan's a guy who absolutely has some offensive ability, but he'll have Nino Niederreiter on his line. That's a proven NHL scorer. You've got Timo Meier on that team. You've got Philip Kurashev on that team. That's a group that can definitely score, and I think their special teams are going to give them a chance. Goaltending questions on that team for sure, but yeah. I think the depth at least is there where they can balance things out a little bit. I think France is really the team that's going to struggle in that group.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if they win a game. Other than that, I think Czechia and Switzerland are going to battle it out for that 2 spot. Ultimately, I think it goes Canada 1, Czechia 2 in that group. But if you're asking me what team not to sleep on in this tournament that people are going to overlook, it's 1000% Czechia. I like the way they're constructed. I feel like when it comes to a tournament like this, these are all guys that aren't necessarily used to playing with each other. You want to go with the best cohesion and the best sort of identity that you can have. And I think Czechia has a really really firm identity. Like that is going to be a hard to play against, gritty, physical team there. And I think they built a roster that has some identity to it. So I like what they brought to this tournament, and that'll be good for Canada. They're going to win the group. They'll likely head into the knockout rounds undefeated, but I think it'll be good for them to get a test from Czechia, because I think they will.
Yeah. And Czechia, let's not forget, 2 years ago they won the World Championships, so that was a big deal for that country there. And they definitely got embarrassment of riches in that with Dostal, Vmelka, and Vladar. Vladar's your number 3, and that's actually he's had a pretty decent season in Philadelphia before play has dropped off a little bit there, but he's had a great start. But we're going to transition to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss Group B for the Olympic Games, as they will be the first team to start in these games starting on Wednesday. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And the Winter Games are officially here. And if you're anything like us, you're locking into every event that you get to see on the bigger stage every 4 years. That's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected on the action. The drama of curling matches to start slow and somehow get intense. Fast speed skating decided by inches. Hockey games that feel different right from the opening faceoff. Every niche event becomes must watch when you're fully locked into the competition. FanDuel gives the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them with FanDuel. Play your game. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Wednesday. And if you haven't already, make sure you check out our Everydayer Club. And it's a ad-free audio feed for the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. It's an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat of listeners of this show. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more. Discussing Group B for this one, which is Finland, Sweden, Slovakia, and Italy. Group B, as we mentioned, will be the first teams to take the ice in Milano Cortina starting at 10:40, where Slovakia takes on Finland and Sweden takes on Italy. But the second game of this tournament will be a rematch of last year's Four Nations face-off, where Finland got the overtime win over Sweden on that Saturday afternoon last year. But let's go over some of the lineups. And for Sweden, we just like last year, Jacob, their strength is their blue line. My goodness, they have an embarrassment of riches for the blue line. Gustav Forsling is on the top pair with Rasmus Dahlin, Captain Victor Hedman with Rasmus Andersson, and then Erik Karlsson, 3-time Norris Trophy winner, is there. They do struggle a little bit down the middle as far as after the first line, as far as like scoring, but they do provide a lot of the defensive side of the ice, not necessarily offensive scoring. It's crazy because one thing that they changed was putting Elias Pettersson away from center and putting him on the wing instead of Zibanejad. So that's a little bit of a difference there, but they're scoring mostly coming from wingers. Adrian Kempe, Philip Forsberg, Lucas Raymond, Jesper Bratt. Those are guys who can really put the puck in the back of the net for Sweden. As far as Finland, two-way centers mostly. Again, they do struggle. Obviously, with the presence of Alexander Barkov is going to be missing, but still, Sebastian Aho is probably the best offensive scorer as far as the centers there. But again, Anton Lundell hasn't had to move. He's going to be with Eetu Luostarinen and on that third line there. And you have the offensive scoring with Mikko Rantanen. Mikael Granlund's actually been named captain. He had a great tournament last year as well. But they do have that shutdown pair of Miro Heiskanen and Asa Lindell, two teammates in Dallas. So that's going to be fun teams to watch for those two rivals.
Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting group as well, and it's unfortunate for Finland because I had really high hopes for their chances in this tournament if Barkov was going to be able to play. And obviously that is not the case given the training camp injury, which just has honestly derailed the Panthers season to an extent, and now it's likely going to derail Finland's gold medal hopes, or even possibly their medal hopes in general.
Yeah.
And that's a really tough loss. But with that said, it's going to, just like it has for the Panthers, it's going to provide a lot of opportunity for Anton Lundell. I think he's going to really be kind of the breakout star of this tournament. He's been a breakout star in the NHL this season, taking on more responsibility, but I think this is the type of tournament where he's really going to shine. Just because there's an opportunity there up and down the middle for Finland, and out of the guys on that roster, I don't think you can find another player on that team outside of Mikko Rantanen who has the kind of big game experience that Anton Lundell has. And I would even argue Lundell has more big game experience than Rantanen does, just because he's been in 3 Stanley Cup finals in his 4 years in the NHL. That's not something you see very often. And it's not like he was a passenger on any of those teams. He was a key contributor and a big game player, big time scorer. Does a lot of things. He elevates his game in the biggest moments. So Anton Lundell excites me on that roster. I love the fact that he's getting to stick with Etu, gives him some familiarity there. And then when you look at the rest of that Finland lineup, the fact that Heiskanen and Lundell get to stick together is another big bonus. And that's something that where Finland last year in the Four Nations tournament, their blue line was just kind of decimated with injuries.
Before it started.
Yeah, and Heiskanen was the main guy in that discussion who injuries just kind of ruined that whole roster. So it's a lot of returning players there for that group, and should be a competitive team. Another former Panther on that roster too, and Eric Haula. I think, like you said, Sweden though, that's my favorite defense in this tournament. I think they have the best blue line, and I don't really think it's particularly close. When you look at that group, you've got two-way talent everywhere, except Erik Karlsson. But that's going to kind of be the beauty of this blue line is every player on that blue line is so good defensively that you can really shelter Erik Karlsson on a third pair, or even just as a power play specialist if you need to. And the rest of that blue line is so solid defensively. So that's really an advantage they have. And for their strength on defense, they have a weakness in the middle. But I think Sweden for me is the favorite to win that group. I think Finland will get close, but I think Sweden's my favorite to win that group.
Yeah, right now Erik Karlsson's on their second power play unit, while Dahlin is working on their first unit, deservedly so. And if you need OEL to do it, you can. So that's a great thing. And also the strength as far as youth and experience in goal as well, with Philip Gustafsson there, Jacob Markstrom, even though he's had a bad season in New Jersey, that's also a strength there. But also Finland also has a strength in net with UC Saros, even though he's undersized, one of the better ones. And also there's a little bit of that continuity from last year's Four Nations. Remember, in the Four Nations, Finland started every single goalie in 3 different games. So they've actually maybe a little bit of an advantage, each person getting a start there. But I assume it's going to be Saros to start and the rest of the way. But Slovakia, they made history a few years ago, back in the 2021 draft, when Simon Nemec and Juraj Slafkovsky were back-to-back picks in the draft. There, it's still a growing and developing country as far as hockey, but some underrated talent here in that. Martin Fehervari's there, Eric Chernak for Slovakia being on the bottom pair as well. And also he never signed a contract with the Panthers, but he did have come to development camps and also spent a season in Charlotte. Oliver Coulier, he's on the 4th line. I remember seeing him, and I remember just him standing out as far as his physicality. Right now he's back in the Eastern Hemisphere for him, but really cool to see him back there. And also Italy, most of their team is mostly players from the country. No one playing in the U.S. mostly. So really, obviously, the host nation is going to get an opportunity to compete, but chances are they're not going to go far in this tournament. But I'm very excited to watch Slovakia. Dalibor Dvorsky, he's probably going to be like the replacement for Robert Thomas in St. Louis if he gets traded. So that's also a nice little vision of what the future of international and also retool, if you want to call it, for St. Louis.
Yeah, I think Slovakia. I don't think they'll have a great tournament, but this is going to be really good for some of the young players coming from there, and this is going to be a nice learning experience for some of the guys on that roster. And I'm thinking Slavkovsky, Nemec, and you mentioned it, but that's kind of what Slovakia as a hockey nation this is sort of what they envision with those two guys leading the charge with an Olympic appearance. And this group almost kind of reminds me a little bit of like U.S. soccer, like U.S. men's soccer to an extent. It's like when Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams in that group, they were all really, really young, and they missed the World Cup that year. But you just kind of felt like this is the young group of talent that's going to kind of make soccer relevant for the U.S. It feels like Slovakia right now has a few young players that are they might not be that competitive in this Olympics, but you can sense that this is the group, like this is a generation of players that's going to lead Slovakia into another era of hockey relevance. So I think that'll be good for them. Another team that's big and physical. Slavkovsky is Ruzicka in the middle of their lineup is a big physical guy. Dvorsky definitely, and Martin Pospisil is one of the toughest, nastiest players in the NHL right now. The Calgary guy, he's physical. He's not afraid to throw his weight around. He's aggressive. He's not going to be dropping the gloves here most likely because of the way the rules are. But he's a known enforcer and grinder on the NHL ice. And then a name that might be sort of under the radar and almost forgotten just because he's near the end of his playing career, but Thomas Tatar is on this team. And that's a guy who had a really solid NHL career. He's got to be like 35 or 36 years old now, but always cool to see a former NHL player, a longtime veteran who went back home or back to Europe to play the last few years of their career. It's always cool to see them in a tournament like this and just see how they still hold up against NHL players. So Thomas Tatar, he's going to be fun to watch. He always is.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head on his age for him. I remember he was a part of the original Misfits for Vegas after spending some time in Detroit, then jumped around Montreal, and then after that, just short stints on Colorado and Seattle right before going back there. And he's also the captain of this team, Thomas Tatar there. So giving it to the veteran, deservedly so there. But now we're going to discuss Group C, which we will discuss where we will discuss the United States and company here next on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Quo. And new year, new systems. This is the time where a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there it is. Streamlining your communication is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Your whole team can call, text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster, more personal, and it works right from your phone or computer, so you can even keep your existing number. No surprise, the Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted for more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. What makes this year where no opportunity, no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off of your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNHL. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNHL. Quo, no missed calls, no miss customers. And thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Wednesday. Once again, here with Jacob Winans on another edition of Winans Wednesday as the men's hockey tournament for the Olympics begins today. And now we continue to Group C: USA, Latvia, Germany, and Denmark. So let's start with the USA, the team that we are cheering for. And crazy. The Kachucks did not start on the same line last year, but within the same game, they were on the same line together. And the great thing about this one for the U.S. is they're going to start this tournament with Quinn Hughes when all the drama is, will he travel to Montreal/Boston? Will he not? Will he join? Yada, yada, yada. So him on that top pair with Charlie McAvoy, which crazy to think that they're starting that to begin with for the tournament. Obviously, you can tweak things later on, but they're not putting Hughes and Faber to start that tournament. So as teammates in Minnesota, but when you have Faber, a good two-way defenseman, along with a stay-at-home guy in Jacob Slavin, that is a great pair as well. And then Dylan Larkin, who was on the fourth line last year, he's upgraded now to the third line. He has a prolific goal scorer in Tage Thompson, Kyle Connor on his wing, and then you have those grindy players in Brock Nelson, JT Miller, and there's some online discourse and about Jack Hughes, about him missing the last few games but getting cleared for the Olympics. Devils fans are not happy about this, by the way, for those who don't know about the situation, but that's the strongest team in net. Obviously, coming into this tournament with the Hart Trophy winner and Vezina Trophy winner, and if he does not play well, you have Ottinger and Swayman as those two. And Swayman is part of a Jennings Trophy pair. Ottinger can be a Vezina Trophy winner sometime in his life as well. But man, is this a big strength for what they got here. So I'm excited. I'm excited for just the games to begin, for them to take place when the USA does play their first game against Latvia on Thursday.
Yeah, I think this is a group that has a really good opportunity to win the gold medal here. I think ultimately it's going to come down to, yes, can their goaltending hold up? And they have the strongest trio in net. It's not particularly close on paper, but there are definitely big game concerns when it comes to Connor Hellebuck. His playoff performance has been underwhelming in recent years. Jake Ottinger, he's a guy who has performed well in the playoffs until he meets Edmonton, and then it seems to fall apart for him, which he's not the only one who struggles to stop their offense. But and then Swayman, who had a down year last year, has played great hockey this year. So they've got three really, really solid goalies, and I think they'd feel comfortable rolling out any of those three in a potential medal match. So that's a strength. I like the way they're built on the wings. Love the wings. Gensel, Boldy, the Tkachuk brothers, Connor, and then Tage Thompson, who should have been on the Four Nations roster. That mistake was corrected. And keep in mind, Tage Thompson scored the goal that won the U.S. the World Championship. So
for the first time in 80 plus years.
Exactly. So they reward him for that. I think what this is going to come down to is when all is said and done, it's going to be U.S. and Canada. Can the U.S. team keep up with their offense? Mm-hmm. They have the defense to do it. Hughes, McAvoy, Slavin, Faber, those are all guys who can play that two-way game, and they can skate really well, which is important because Canada is by far the best skating team in this tournament. It's very, very unfortunate that Seth Jones isn't here because they don't have a ton of righties. They only have two on this roster. And it would have been really interesting to see if they would ever have considered going with a Hughes Faber, which is a D pair in Minnesota, and then potentially a Werenski Jones, reuniting the top pair that was just dominant in Columbus. So it's a really unfortunate break that Seth Jones isn't here. My concern is just the bottom six scoring. Can it keep pace with Canada and what they're going to be able to do in the bottom six? Dylan Larkin was fantastic in Four Nations. Mm-hmm. Can you get a repeat of that? I think Tage Thompson is going to score with the best of them, but I've got questions about JT Miller here. I've got questions about Brock Nelson here. As much as I love Vinny Trocheck, it's hard for me to justify Trocheck on this roster over Jason Robertson. It's really hard for me to justify JT Miller over Jason Robinson or even Cole Caulfield. I don't know. I feel like there could have been more bottom six offense brought to this tournament. It seems they're going to lean into more of a physical approach and more of a defensive approach, and hopefully that ends up being a winning strategy. But one thing is for certain: if this team is going to compete, they're going to need more from Austin Matthews than they got in Four Nations, and they're going to need something from Jack Hughes.
Yep,
those are the two guys who are big offensive players that just didn't really perform when it came time against Canada, really in the entire Four Nations setup. So we'll see what they're able to do in a longer tournament where they'll have a little bit more runway to find their game.
Yeah, and like we mentioned with the 13th forward that you can dress, chances are it's going to be Trocheck, and that's going to be heavily reliant on defensive zone draws, penalty killing. So that's going to be definitely important for them, at least having, if they were to meet Canada in a knockout round, of them consistently having them reset and hopefully tiring them out, and as far as like them gaining the zone and everything. But let's go to Latvia. So Sandis Vilmanis playing on the top line, obviously not as far as a lot of depth for Latvia, but still a lot of well-known NHLers that we know, including former Panther Rudy Balcers. Zemis Gergensons, who plays on the Lightning, is the top center for Latvia as well. And then a little bit of a up in question mark in net, because Artur Shilovs hasn't had too much runway in the NHL. He did win a Calder Cup trophy. He did get a few starts in Vancouver when they were in the second round against Edmonton, and then Elvis Merzlikins is up and down. He's not necessarily the future in Columbus. It's looks like it's going to be Jet Greaves' Nets for the future. So I'm interested to see how Latvia holds out. It's still one that's growing, but I have a question on whether they're going to even get past the qualifying to make it to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I think Latvia, they definitely have decent enough goaltending compared to some of the other teams in the field if they're on. I mean,
yeah,
Shilovs and Merzlikins they're both guys who are up and down, but they're both guys who, when they're hot, they are hot.
Yes.
Shilovs won some really, really important playoff games. He went toe-to-toe with the Oilers in the season that they make it to the Stanley Cup final.
Game 7.
Yeah, took them to a game 7, and they just ran out of gas in that one. And that game 7 loss wasn't even on him. It was the entire team just got run out of the building from puck drop. So that's a guy who can definitely turn it on when he's in rhythm. Merzlikins, we know he's definitely a character. When he's playing really well and when the confidence is going, he'll let you know about it, but he's also stopping pucks. So that's interesting. I think the storyline here, though, is definitely opening against the USA, Vilmanis and McAvoy.
Yeah, which he admitted that it wasn't the best hit from him, by the way.
Correct. It'll be interesting to see if anything transpires there. And I think it'll be good for Vilmanis. He's going to be matched up. He's in the top 6. He's on the top line. He's going to be matched up against some really good players, including teammate Matthew Tkachuk, which, Tkachuk's not going to take it easy on him just because they're teammates. That's not his style. And that'll be interesting to see. It's a team that should win a game or two. They'll be competitive. They will definitely be competitive. And Latvia is a team I'll never count out when it comes to being competitive in these tournaments. They've shocked the world before as a hockey nation, and I think they just tend to bring it in these games. But excited to see Belinskis, excited to see Vilmanis, former Panther Rudy Balcers, and then got a trivia question for you on this team. Can you tell me which player on this Latvia roster was actually traded 1-for-1 for Carter Verhaeghe?
Oh, what?
Kristers Gudlevskis, their third goalie, was traded 1-for-1 for Carter Verhaeghe in 2017. Islanders and Lightning. That was a 1-for-1 trade, believe it or not. That is funny. It's interesting how that turned out.
Yeah, that was his second team because he was drafted by Toronto. So
correct.
So the Panthers is his fourth team. So crazy to think there. But what a rise for Carter Verhaeghe, leading the AHL in scoring when he was with Syracuse as well, to 3-time Stanley Cup champion for him. But let's go Germany and Denmark here. It's a lot of top end talent. I mean, you have 2 top 3 picks in Timmy Stützle from Ottawa, Leon Draisaitl for Edmonton, a guy who's trying to make a little bit of a redemption tour, and Lucas Reichel, who's currently with the AHL with the Canucks, JJ Peterka, who was just recently traded from Buffalo to Utah there, and then Philip Grubauer. He was a Vezina finalist and then a fall from grace with injuries and just not really fitting in for what was been going on in Seattle there. So ever since he left Colorado, it's just really been tough for him there. But man, this if Leon Draisaitl puts the team on his back, they could steal a game or 2 here. But I'm not necessarily calling them a favorite. And obviously, and they also have one of the players who, if it weren't for Cale Makar in this era, maybe Moritz Seider would have a Norris Trophy by now here to his name. So still a lot of talent for Germany here.
Yeah, Germany's got a team that is going to be able to play some defense. They're going to be able to score. Draisaitl, if this team gets on the power play, they'll be able to put some special teams points on the board. There's no doubt about that. Mm-hmm. I think the X factor is actually a guy who's not even in the NHL anymore, but was for a little bit of time, and that's Dominic Cahoon. He's going to be on Draisaitl's wing. They, I believe, played pretty well together in Edmonton for a little bit. Cahoon just couldn't really put it together as a two-way player, and at a certain point in time, the offense just dried up too much for him to really stick in the NHL. But Cahoon's a guy who can play the international style. You put him with Draisaitl, you might get some offense out of him. I like what they have in their top 6. Their bottom 6 is a little bit more underwhelming. Former Panther there on the 4th line, Nico Sturm, that's a Stanley Cup champion. So two-time Stanley Cup champion. And then Toby Reeder there on the 4th line too. He's a guy who's got some NHL experience, and if I'm not mistaken, had an AHL deal with the Panthers for a short PTO a few years ago. So that's a group that has some scoring ability. But yeah, Seider's the X factor. He's gonna have to play a ton of minutes to stay competitive in these games, and I say they win 1. I think they'll win a game in the group stage. They'll be competitive like Latvia, but ultimately I don't think they have enough down the bottom of the lineup.
Yeah. By the way, Cahoon is a dual citizen. Actually, he's also a dual citizen of Czechia as well. Mm-hmm. He was actually born in Czechia, but has his plays international hockey for Germany here, and hasn't been in the NHL since 2021. So if he could find that a little bit of that magic with Leon Draisaitl again, which they played half a season in 2021, which was the shortened season there. Hey, that could be great for Team Germany here. And then let's go to Denmark, who we see a few familiar faces here based on the team. Lars Eller, Stanley Cup champion, Nikolai Ehlers, who recently left Winnipeg to join the Carolina Hurricanes here. Oliver Bjorkstrand, former, not necessarily Panther, but he played in the Checkers, 2 stints with the Checkers, once under the dual affiliation of Seattle and Florida, and then came back under the Panthers affiliation. Never actually made his debut with the Panthers. So yeah. That is a little bit of that for Denmark, and it's crazy because goaltending is also a big weakness here because Freddie Anderson, with the injuries that he's gone through in his career, and also Matt Solgaard. Let's not forget Jake Sanderson called him out publicly just a few months ago there. So and them not being able to get saves. So that's going to be a little bit of a struggle, in my opinion, for Denmark to get some saves here, along with possibly needing that top line to carry them.
Yeah, I think their biggest weakness right now is just their center depth. Lars Eller at this point in his career, probably not a top line center on a competitive team. Ehlers will be asked to do a lot. Bjorkstrand will be asked to do a lot of the offensive heavy lifting, and he's had a tough year. So not a ton of confidence in this group. Defense, underwhelming. Goaltending, you're going to be asking a lot of Freddie Anderson. Can he handle that kind of workload? One thing I will say that their goalies they have really big goalies. Anderson's a big guy. Matt Sogard, I think, is 6'6" or 6'7". He's a really tall guy. So I think, if you can steal a few periods here and there with goaltending and keep yourself competitive, they might stay in some games. Ultimately, it's the offense that I don't think they have enough of. I think you've got really one super reliable scorer in Nick Ehlers, but it's hard to provide all the offense as a play driver when all the attention is on you. So, we'll see what Denmark's able to do. I could be wrong. I don't think they have a super successful tournament here, though. I think, in my opinion, they're the weakest team in this group.
More than likely. And Dennis Malgin, he's top line center. I looked up his age, 36. So he's been around. And
Lars Eller, you mean?
Lars Eller, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad.
I was about to say, if Dennis Malgin's 36, I'm going crazy.
Sorry. Lars Eller. Lars Eller is 36 years old. I don't know why I said Dennis Malgin. But yeah. So yeah, he's gonna have a hard time keeping up with the speed of this tournament here. But let's go on to our predictions for our medals here for the tournament. So I'm gonna go with bronze. I'm gonna go with Sweden to get the bronze for because they're just really strong with the blue line, and also, like we mentioned, with the youth in goal, and also with experience as well. They have a nice mix there. Despite the weakness down the middle as far as offense. I'm going for the US. I'm rooting for the USA, but until they beat the best, I can't go against Canada. So I think gold will go to Canada once again, and then the USA will win silver. But I'm hoping that I'm wrong here. So Sweden, USA, Canada, as far as 3-2-1. How about you?
Yeah, I'm actually going to flip it a little bit. I'm definitely going Sweden bronze. I think that's a team that is going to I think they're going to be head and shoulders above the rest of the field except US and Canada. I think Sweden's going to compete, and I really think they'll get very close to a gold medal game. I would not be shocked to see them take a semifinal into overtime or something. That's a team that's going to be really tough out. I'm going silver for Canada. I think US gold, and ultimately I think the US just kind of has a few players on that team with the clutch gene, and I think the smaller ice is going to help them. If this were bigger ice, more open space, Canada's going to run wild. They have so much speed and talent on that team, but condensed ice, gold medal game. You've got a healthy Matthew Tkachuk. He's not out there limping around on one leg this time. And if you look at that gold medal game in Four Nations, the margins were razor thin, and it came down to just a couple of mistakes from guys on the U.S. side who just don't usually make those kind of mistakes. And my biggest question mark with Canada is their goaltending. I don't know that their goaltending holds up against the U.S. So I'm gonna say U.S. gold. Canada is going to get the silver. It's going to be close. It's not a USA Canada gold medal game if it doesn't go to overtime. It's going to go to overtime. We know it is. I think ultimately, I'll even give you a prediction who scores the OT winner. I'm going Brady Tkachuk. I think he's going to end up being the one who brings home the gold medal. Just feels like that kind of year for the US. And I think they performed better in the gold medal game than they did last year. In the Four Nations tournament. But I will say, I think it's going to be the same for the women too. I don't know if you saw the U.S. beatdown on a Canada without their star player and arguably the best female hockey player of all time there in Canada. We don't know how bad Poulin's injury is, so we'll see what happens with that. But the U.S. women's team looked absolutely unstoppable today.
And here's the thing, it can't be. I'm not surprised that the women beat them as badly as they did, because go back to the rivalry series. The USA dominated that series as well, and outscored them by more than 10 before. I know Olympics is a different stage, and then you're without the best player, but at the same time, based on how the tournament goes for USA Women's, as far as the top 5 are already in one group and then the bottom 5 are in the other. I'm not celebrating yet because they're destined to meet again. While the men's tournament is a way, way different format. But at the same time, that just goes to show how they view the strength of hockey between the men's and the women's there. But let's hope that the USA wins. If they do win, if the men do win, USA win, I'm gonna say Jack Eichel gets the golden goal, or Kyle Connor. I would like one of those. It'll be redemption for Kyle Connor.
I agree. And can we also point out how funny it is that Matthew Tkachuk and Jack Eichel are on a line together after what happened in the final a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Tkachuk threw a hit. Yeah. Tkachuk threw a hit on Eichel in that tournament that we thought Eichel was finished. It looked like his whole head came off his body from that hit. And now they're on a line together in the Olympics. It's hilarious how hockey works out sometimes.
Yeah, and then Tkachuk getting 2 10-minute misconducts in that same game and everything, and then but hey, once you put on that uniform, the past is the past, and you just worry about today, and you're just trying to win with your brothers here. So that is something that I'm really, really excited about from here. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on another edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. A long one, but it was necessary when it came to us previewing this tournament for the Olympics, for the men's tournament. So can't wait. The first game is tomorrow at 10:40. So really can't wait there. But tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at JakeW_8.
Awesome, and see you next week as we will continue the Olympic talk.
Looking forward to it.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast and be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Steve Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.